Hello viewers, welcome to K Diagnostics, Dio here. Today we have a 2007 Subaru Forester with a 2.5 liter. The complaint on this vehicle is there is a loud noise coming from under the hood. And the customer also stated that the steering wheel has become hard when that noise started, and also the battery light and the brake light is on the dash. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to confirm the customer's complaint. After confirming the customer's complaint, we're going to start the engine, and then we're going to inspect around the engine bay to see if we can pinpoint where that noise is coming from. So now let's go inside the vehicle and confirm the customer's complaint. Alright, so I'm going to start the engine so we can confirm the customer's complaint. So right there, the engine is running, and as you can see, the battery light remained on while the engine is running, and also the brake light remained on. So customer's complaint confirmed. So now let's go under the hood. I don't know if you can hear the noise under the hood, but now let's go under the hood so we can see what's causing that noise. Alright, so we are here under the hood. I don't know if you can see this. So right there, there is the noise, guys. It looks like the harmonic balancer is broken. Alright, so I'm gonna go inside the vehicle and turn off the engine. That's an easy one. Alright, so the engine is off. Check this out, guys. So here's the problem. So it looks like, so this is why the brake light is on, because the power steering pump is not working and the alternator is also not working. Okay. And so check that out. What's up, Chris? So check this out. So the harmonic balancer is completely broken. So this is what's causing the noise. See that right there? Okay, so basically the crank pulley is split in half. Okay, so we're gonna have to remove that and replace it, and we're also gonna replace the belts. We're gonna replace the alternator belt and the AC belt, and once we do that, that should be fixed. Okay, so here's the problem. The problem is right there. So as you can see, the crankshaft pulley got split in half. Okay, so we're gonna have to replace it. The harmonic balancer, because there's a rubber part between the inner part of the pulley and the outer part of the pulley. So I'm pretty sure it cracked and then it just came apart. So this is what happened. Okay, so we're gonna have to replace this pulley and the belts. We're gonna replace the AC compressor belt and the alternator belt. And once we do that, this will be fixed. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to remove the cooling fans. So these two cool fans over here have to come out. So the radiator shroud has to come out. We're gonna remove these covers over here that cover the alternator pulley and the AC compressor pulley. Once we remove these, I don't think we're gonna have to remove the radiator. I will see if we have enough room, because we're gonna have to undo the crankshaft bolt so we can remove the crankshaft pulley. So now let's do that. Let's remove these covers first, and then we will remove the cooling fans. So let's do that now. Alright, so I'm gonna start by removing this radiator surge tank. So we're gonna disconnect this tube over here. And then this surge tank has two bolts over here that we have to remove. So it's just gonna come out. So right there, we're gonna get this surge tank out of the way. Alright, so we got the surge tank removed. So now we're gonna remove these two covers that cover the alternator pulley and the AC compressor pulley. Alright, so we got this cover removed. Alright, so now we're gonna remove this bolt so we can remove this cover over here. Alright, so we're gonna get this out of the way. Alright, so as you can see, we're making progress. Okay, so the other thing we want to do is we have to spin these pulleys and make sure that none of these pulleys is stuck. Okay, because you can have a bad bearing inside the alternator. So as you can see, the alternator spins nice and freely, so that's good. And so does the AC compressor. Now we're gonna spin the power steering pump. So same thing, okay, that's good. There is a tensioner here that we also have to spin, so the tensioner spins freely, so that's good. So now the next step is gonna be removing the cooling fans. So there is an electrical connector somewhere here that we have to disconnect. It's down there. I hope you can see that. So that connector over there, that's what we're gonna disconnect. So I'm gonna disconnect it. So right there. So as you can see, I got that connector disconnected, so that's good. Okay, so now we're gonna come on this side. There is another connector down here. You won't be able to see it, but it's basically the same connector like the one we disconnected on the other side. So the connector is actually down there under this fan. Alright, so right here I got the electrical connector of the second cooling fan disconnected, so that's good. So now we're gonna remove the cooling fans. The cooling fan has 3 bolts up here. There's one bolt over here. I hope you can see that. So there's one bolt over here, okay, and then there's another one here, and then there's a third one over here. So we're gonna remove these 3 bolts, and once these bolts are removed, we should be able to slide the cooling fan up. Alright guys, so I removed the 3 bolts that hold the cooling fan on the radiator. So now we're gonna pull the cooling fans out. Actually, hold on, I'm gonna change the way of doing this. Instead of removing the cooling fans, I'm gonna remove the entire radiator assembly, okay? Because even if we remove the cooling fans, I don't think we will have enough room between the radiator and the pulley so we can remove the crankshaft bolt. So we will need much room over here. So I'm gonna have to remove the radiator also, okay? So to remove the radiator, we're gonna have to remove these radiator mounts. So we're gonna undo this 12mm bolt over here and then this one, okay? But before we do that, we have to drain the coolant out of the radiator first. So there's a drain tube over here. I don't know if you can see it, but down over there is the drain. So I'm gonna undo the drain so we can drain coolant out of the radiator. So there's a little screw here that I have to undo. So I have a drain container under the vehicle to catch all the coolant that's gonna come out of the radiator. So right there, as you can see, we are draining the radiator. Okay, so I'm gonna let it drain, and then I'll bring you guys back up so we can undo the upper radiator hose and then the radiator mount, and I'm also gonna undo the lower radiator hose, and then we will remove the radiator. So let's let the radiator drain. Alright guys, so all the coolant is pretty much drained out of the radiator. We don't have any coolant dripping out of the drain, so that's good. So off camera, I did disconnect these lines over here. I don't know if you can see them, but at this corner over here, there are two transmission cooler lines that I did disconnect off camera. So let me zoom you guys in so you can see. So I did disconnect these two hoses over here. Okay, so there's this one, and then there are two of them. Okay, so I did disconnect those two hoses and the lower radiator hose. Okay, so now after we remove the radiator mounts, the radiator should be able to come out. Okay. So I'm just gonna lay it back here. Just gonna get it out of the way. Alright, so since we got everything disconnected, the radiator should come out at this point. So I'm gonna lift up the radiator. So here comes the radiator. So the radiator is right there. So I'm gonna get it out of the way. Alright guys, so the radiator is removed. So here is the problem. So let's remove these belts. So the belts don't look bad, but I'm gonna replace them anyways. So look at that. There is your problem, lady. Okay, so this harmonic balancer split in half. Okay, so this is the problem. This is what was causing the noise here in the engine compartment. Okay, so there's a problem. So let's get this out of the way. We're just gonna sit it over here. So now we have to undo the crankshaft bolt in here so that we can remove this piece. Okay, and after we remove this, we're gonna install a new crank pulley. We're gonna install new serpentine belt, and then we should be good to go. Okay, so there is a bolt over here that we have to undo so we can remove this. So I'm gonna sit you guys over here so that I can remove this bolt. So we're gonna get our So now I'm gonna remove the crank pulley bolt. Alright, so here comes the bolt for the crank pulley. So now we're gonna try to remove this piece of the crank pulley that's left here. So we're just gonna rock it back and forth. So right here, here she comes. So here is the other piece of the crank pulley. So basically the pulley sits like this. Okay, so as you can see, it got split in half. Okay, so the harmonic balancer came apart. So this was the problem, guys. So now I'm going to show you the new one that we're gonna install. So here is the new one from Ford. So let's get the new one out of the box. So do you see how the new one looks? So it's one piece. Okay, but look at the old one. Okay, the old one is in like two pieces right now, and then compare it to the new one. Okay, so this is what we're gonna install. So I'm gonna get the old one out of the way. So now I'm gonna install this one. Alright, so I got the new pulley installed. So now we're gonna install the crankshaft bolt. So I'm gonna use this impact gun to tighten it. Alright, so I have tightened the crankshaft bolt. So now I'm going to install the AC compressor belt. So here is the new belt for the AC compressor. So I'm going to install it. So what I was doing was I was shortening the rod for AC compressor belt tensioner. So now that I got the belt on, so now I'm gonna put some tension on the AC compressor belt. Alright, so I have tightened the bolt for the AC compressor belt tensioner. So now we're gonna install the alternator belt. But before we install the alternator belt, we're gonna undo this adjustment first. So now I'm gonna install the alternator belt. Alright, so I have installed the belt. So now I'm gonna bring you guys over here so I can show you how everything looks, and then we will get the radiator installed. Alright guys, so here is how everything looks over here. As you can see, our new crank pulley is right there. Our belts are new, so everything looks good. So now the next step will be installing the radiator. So I'm gonna put you guys over here so we can install the radiator. So now let's do that. So here comes the radiator. So right there, the radiator is sitting. I'm gonna reconnect the electrical connectors of the cooling fans. So now we're gonna install the radiator mount. So now I'm gonna reinstall the upper radiator hose. So just like that. So now I'm going to reconnect the transmission cooler lines over here. Alright, so I reconnected the transmission cooler lines. So now I'm gonna go under the vehicle and reconnect the lower radiator hose. Alright, so I have reconnected the lower radiator hose. So now I'm gonna fill the radiator with some coolant. Alright guys, so we got coolant in the radiator. So now I'm going to install the radiator surge tank. So the surge tank is gonna go over here. Alright, so the surge tank is installed. So now we're gonna install the cover that covers the alternator belt and the AC belt. Alright, so that's tightened. So now we're gonna install the second cover for the AC compressor belt. Alright, Alright, so that's good. We're almost done. So now I'm gonna put coolant, a little bit of coolant in the surge tank, and then we will start the engine. Alright guys, so now I'm gonna go inside the vehicle and start the engine. Alright guys, so as you can hear, the engine is running. It sounds good. We're gonna let it idle for a couple minutes, and then I'll bring you guys over here in the engine bay so we can inspect everything, and then we will wrap up this video. I hope you can tell the difference right now. This engine runs a lot better. It runs smoother. The noise is no longer there. And the noise was being caused by this pulley over here that came apart, okay? Guys, we are here under the hood. The engine is running. And as you can see, everything looks good, okay? So the noise is no longer there. So this is fixed. So now let's go inside the vehicle and look at the dash to see if the lights that we had on the dash are now off. After we look at the dash, we're gonna turn off the engine, and then we'll come up here and wrap up the video. Alright guys, so as you can see, the engine is running and there are no lights on the dash, okay? So this is good guys, this is fixed. The battery light and the brake light was coming on because the alternator was not spinning, okay? The steering wheel was also hard because the power steering pump was not spinning, okay? So that was what caused these lights to come on. And now that we fixed the problem, everything else is now working properly. So I'm gonna turn off the engine so we can go outside and wrap up this video. All right, so now let's go outside. All right guys, so we are back here under the hood. This vehicle is fixed. The noise that we heard coming from the engine bay is no longer there. And here is our new pulley and the belt. So everything looks good. So here is the problem, okay? The problem was this crankshaft pulley that came apart, okay? It was split in half. This is what was causing the noise, and this is what was causing the battery light to be on and the steering wheel to be hard, because when this came apart, when the crankshaft was spinning, it wasn't spinning the alternator and the power steering pump anymore. So that's why those lights came on the dash, okay? So this is a problem. And the customer is actually lucky because when this came apart, it didn't damage the cooling fans. Actually, the cooling fans are good, okay? Sometimes what I see is when these harmonic balancers come apart, they hit the fans and then they damage the cooling fans. But luckily in this case, the cooling fans are good, so they didn't get damaged. So I'm reusing the old fans. So just by replacing this crankshaft pulley and the serpentine belt, we are back in business. So this is fixed guys. So now let's wrap up this video. Alright guys, this vehicle is fixed. This is how you find a noise under the hood. In this case, the crankshaft pulley came apart. This was easy to see. We saw it. We took the radiator out. We removed the crankshaft pulley. We installed a new one with new belts, and now everything is good. So I hope you like this video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumb down. But if you do, you gotta tell me why so we can make better videos in the future. If this is your first time here, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you can get notified every time I upload a new video. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. Thanks for watching guys. See you next time.